Hi, welcome to Dave's Shop. I'm Dave. On today's episode, we're going to be making a CNC carved lake map. I'll go through the whole process of how we designed it and then how we actually carved it out. Won't you join me?
Okay, our first attempt at making a CNC lake map is going to be using 1/4" ply. I'm going to make it with 2 1/4" layers. The top part will get cut out, the bottom part will get traced for the map, and then painted blue for water. I'll then glue the 2 boards together when I'm done, and we'll put some stenciling on it and see how that turns out. If that works pretty good, then I think what we'll do is we'll move up a level. We'll do it on a glued up board and make it an actual carving and try an epoxy fill, an epoxy resin fill. So having said that, I need to cut these down. I want to do it about 15.5 inches square, because that'll be what'll fit on my bed of my CNC machine. So I'm going to cut it just a little size a little large on the one side, then I'll square it up. I'll do the 2 pieces, then we'll put them onto my sled and we'll square up the other 2 sides, and if everything works out, we'll have a 15-inch square times 2. Sorry, 15.5-inch square times 2. Okay, so we got those done. Now we'll get our sled. Square up the one edge. And now we'll do our 15.5-inch. So there you go. Got our 2 boards, top and our bottom. Okay, so the first thing what we want to do is we want to give this a bit of a sanding before we put it on the CNC. This is going to be our top one. It's going to get the cutout, but it's a bit rough, and I prefer doing it by hand sanding versus using a power tool, just to get a bit more control. This is very thin veneer and we don't want to go through it, so we're just trying to knock it down a bit. so that when we put a finish on it, it'll have a nice smooth feeling to it. There. So I'll wipe that off, and next step will be to mount it to the CNC, and we'll start doing our cuts.
So now that we have the board sanded, I want to put on a couple of coats of polyurethane before we mount it onto the CNC machine for cutting. There. So that's good for the first coat. We'll let that dry. Come back in about an hour. Give it a light sanding. And give it the second coat. Okay, now that we have the board coated twice with the polyurethane, I've gone ahead and put down some blue tape on my CNC board, and I've also got matching on the back of the board we're going to cut. I don't always use this method. If the parts are smaller, I tend to try to use like clamping items instead, just because this stuff is not the easiest to find sometimes. So what you do, so I have the gel here. We'll just put some on this tape on each of them. Do this without taking up a lot of. The lid on that. So to get that chunky out of there. And we'll spray some activator on the other side, on the other board. And we'll line this up with the corner. And press down. Yeah. Now, we already have a 1/8 bit in there. So now we're just going to have to home it and zero out the X and Y, and then we can set the Z or Z. Alright, now we're going to swap out the bits. And then we'll move it off. We'll redo 0 for Z. And we'll just double check, make sure home is good. Okay, so raise it up, put the dust shield on. And we'll try cutting the islands first, I think, and then the perimeters last. Okay, so there we have it. That was the final run. Now that we have the map cut out, I've left it attached with a few tabs. What I want to do is I want to put it down on the backing board. I want to trace out the design so I know where to kind of put the paint down. I want to still be able to get good adhesion to the remainder of the wood with the glue so I can sandwich the two pieces together. So I'm just going to square them up. I do have it marked for the front and the one side. Now I'll just trace out the lake. And I'm not trying to be 100%, I'm just trying to get a good image of where the lake is and where it's going to sit when the boards are sandwiched together. And like I said, then I can paint the blue for the water, and I'll still have ample room to apply glue so I can sandwich the two boards together and make it one. And once we get the perimeter of the lake done, we'll go back and we'll trace around the islands as well. I don't really need to, I guess. I'm gonna have to paint blue anyways where the islands are. So we'll see. But I'll still trace them out anyways. So I got a bit of a reference. And I'm gonna leave them attached because that way when I cut the board out, I'll know where the islands are supposed to go. And some of them are pretty small, so I might not even be able to use them. Okay, so that's it. And I know this is probably hard to see, but there we have basically the outline. So now I can paint in the blue that I want for the water, and I'll leave the rest bare so I can have surface for the glue to adhere to. Now that we have the lake traced out on the bottom board, I'm going to give it a coat of what will be the blue water. So I had some paint mixed up, just a little sample size. Don't need a lot because right now I don't know how many we're going to be doing, so we'll start off with just the least amount as possible so we don't waste any, and we'll go from there. Just give it a bit of a stir. Now, just before I start painting, I'm not sure if it'll come up on the camera very well, but you can see how we've got it traced out, including the small islands. And we're just going to try to cover in just to the edge. I mean, we'll go over a little bit, but the plan is to try to keep as much of this free space so that we can apply the glue and have a good adhesion from the top piece. In case you're wondering, this is just a deep base tint. It's an interior exterior satin enamel. I'm not sure whether we'll have to have more than one coat, but we'll see how this goes on. let it dry, and then we'll come back. And of course, like anything else, the first time you do it, you're bound to be making some mistakes. And from those mistakes, we'll learn and improve for the next time. But I'd have to say this seems to be a relatively simple plan to attack. Try not to have too many big mounds of paint laying on it, so it'll allow it to stick or settle down on top of it. And just going, as I said, outside the lines, not being perfect. Because this will be covered up. Now, ideally, you can get more creative. You could add in some white to create the waves on the lake. If you know the lake you're working on, you'll know which direction the wind blows, and from that you'll be able to have the white caps go the same direction. But I don't think I'm going to be that aggressive at this point. Alright, while that's drying, we'll just move it off to the side for now. We'll bring our cutout in, and we're going to flip it over, and we're going to cut the tabs on the perimeter first. Okay, so we now have our lake. I'll cut out the little pond at the bottom and over here. And then just give it a sanding on both sides. Get rid of some of these fuzzies. And then this will be able to give another coat of poly. And this is our cutout. The only thing we're going to need out of the cutout is the actual islands. And I guess if you were doing something, you could probably utilize this as well. Although we cut it on the inside of the line, and ideally you'd want to cut it on the outside of the line to make it a little larger, but it still has the shape of the lake. So that's a thought. There, I think that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to cut. Just going to go touch this up. Give it another coat of polyurethane, and then we'll be back once that's dry and we'll do a test fit. All right, now that our paint has dried and our polyurethane has dried on the top part, we're going to sandwich them together. So I think the way I want to do this, I don't want to lay the glue down here so it can squeeze out. I'm going to flip over and do our back side here. I'll put the glue on here, then we'll flip it over and then we'll clamp it down. So having said that, let's get spreading some glue. Okay, so now we need to transfer this over. Okay, that looks pretty good. And the last thing I want to do is I want to clamp this. So we're going to use this board and we're going to use our clamps. I think what I'll do is all right, sorry, I got concerned that the board was going to slide a bit. So I'm going to clamp one of these down on each side. Put our pressure board back on and our weight. There, so now we're going to leave that for 24 hours, let it set up, and then we'll do the reveal and see what happens. Stay tuned. All right, so here we are the next day. So we'll take off our makeshift clamping and we'll see how the board adhered. Moment of truth. That looks good. I think it's all down. Good. So that's just what we wanted. So I can get rid of these for now on the board. And the next thing I want to do is I have some cricket cutouts that I want to put down on it. And then once they're adhered, I'll give it another top coat of polyurethane. And while that's drying, I'm going to frame out a border for it, which will attach when it's all dry. So let's get the cricket cutout. Okay, so I have a couple of different things to go on. One, I've got the lake name. I've got the client's information. I've got a dot to position it, a line just to draw your attention down to the area, which that may not work. I may have to do another line, or might not use it. And we have the coordinates. So I'm thinking the coordinates will go down here, the client's information as well. The dot will go where the cottage is, which is right here. So we'll see. I don't know if we need to use that. And then the name of the lake is going to go right over here. So let's start with the name of the lake first and get that on. So the first thing you have to do is you have to peel back very gently. This stuff is finicky. And just make sure we've got it on there good. I don't want to miss that step. So that's roughly where I'd like it to go. And just use your scraper and just run it over. Make sure it's adhering to the board. We'll start over here and we'll start peeling it off. Just take your time. If it starts to lift, just stop, go back. Use your scraper to get it down. I was.
So the last time
Okay, so that one's on. So we'll put the dot on next. . We'll put the location on next. Double check this. Oop. Get a little rub down. Very careful. And the one last thing that I need to add in is we have 4 little islands. So I have the original cutout here, so I can so I know where they go. And I'm going to use some instant glue just to help it. Okay. And a real skinny one. Probably have tweezers. There. So that's what it looks like. So all right, so today we're wrapping up the project. Our map is all dry and looking sharp. And I've gone ahead and I've made a pine frame for it. It's been mitered, put together, and it has a couple of coats of satin polyurethane on it as well. So all we have to do is take our picture, place it into the frame, make sure it's seated down, and then I have some glazier points, and we're just going to push them in so that we can secure the picture into the frame. Give it a spin here to make it easier. And two in the bottom. There you have it. The completed CNC carved lake map, which I'm sure the customer is going to enjoy for years to come. Well, there you have it. That was pretty easy to do once you get the hang of it. Join me next time, and we're going to do another craft that I'm sure you'll find interesting. Don't forget to hit the like, the notification, and subscribe for future videos. Thanks for joining.